LinkedIn presents.
I'm Rufus Griscom, and this is The Next Big Idea. Today, a secretive startup's quest to end privacy as we know it. I'm here in the studio with my friend and Next Big Idea Club co-founder, Panio Gianopoulos.
Hey, Rufus, good to see you.
So, Panio, before we tell listeners why you're here, maybe we should tell them who you are. You're a man of many talents. You used to be a hotshot book editor. You're a published novelist. You have an MBA from Stanford. I think you might also have a black belt.
Yeah, but it's been a long time since I've worn that black belt. To be honest, it's pretty faded.
More like a charcoal gray belt.
Yeah, dusky heather.
It doesn't get a lot of use at the Next Big Idea Club. I mean, although you do important work, it may not be fighting criminals, but you do important work at the Next Big Idea Club. Could you tell us about that?
Sure. So I'm the editorial director, which means that I consider all the upcoming nonfiction titles, and then I pick the books that I think are must-reads for that month. So I look at dozens and dozens, and over the year, hundreds of new nonfiction.
Man, that's a sweet job.
It's a pretty great job. I'll tell you, it gives me just enough to be able to speak about 1% about every topic.
And we're here today because one of those books really grabbed your attention, I think.
That's right. It's called Your Face Belongs to Us. It's by Kashmir Hill, who's a tech reporter at the New York Times. And it's about this mysterious startup called Clearview AI.
One small AI company in the US claims to be able to identify anyone with just about 99% accuracy based on just one photo of their face.
Critics say that a controversial startup poses a new and profound threat to everyone's privacy with its facial recognition technology.
The facial recognition software attempts to match people's faces with billions of images scraped off social media websites and shares them with security agencies.
I'm sure you've seen Minority Report and all those similar sci-fi movies where, flash of your face and it tells them everything about you, what you like to buy, what you like to do. And the fact that this future is actually happening right now is exciting, but also terrifying. So the book gets into the pursuit of this company and what they're doing, and also the ramifications, both legally, socially, politically, to this technology becoming commonplace.
I have to say, I may be one of the few people who's kind of looking forward to this technology, Panio, because I'm really just horrendously bad at face recognition. This really comes up at back-to-school gatherings. And what I really want is I want to look through my augmented reality glasses and see, this is Susie, Felix's mom. Your son Gray had dinner at their house last week, and Gray clogged the toilet.
Look, I totally get it. I'm terrible at remembering names myself. There are very exciting applications to facial recognition, not just in low-stakes situations like the one you just described, but this is
tell
also...
that to Susie, yeah.
Poor Susie. But this is also a really powerful tool for fighting crime, which is primarily what Clearview is being used for right now.
Yeah, I can imagine useful applications like identifying hit-and-run drivers or necklace thieves in surveillance footage.
That sounds like something out of like a Spider-Man comic book.
That's what I'm picturing.
Snatching necklaces and
yes.
running like the old prison striped shirts.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's true. The police love Clearview. Cops in the U.S. have run, I think at this point, more than 1 million searches on it. But, and here's the but, it's flawed technology. It returns plenty of false matches. It's led to innocent people being arrested for crimes they didn't commit just because they resemble the person. So there's definitely a lot of potential for misuse or overuse when it comes to law enforcement.
Interesting. Well, this is an extraordinary tale, and it strikes me that we have here both like a detective story, right? Because Kashmir goes through this extraordinary process of trying to figure out what this company is. They're incredibly well hidden, but it also is this exploration of this really kind of haunting and highly concerning new technology that affects all of us.
It is. And just one word about Clearview, which is funny, is that it's a company, it's dedicated to essentially eliminating privacy, right? Just a flash of a photo and you can find anyone. And we're talking photos, you could be in the background of someone's photo and it'll just, I'd be able to identify you. And yet they're a company that had no real identity. Nobody knew who they were. You went to a website, there was barely any information. So it's cloaked in anonymity. And so much of the book is Kashmir trying to unravel this, who's behind the company, who are the backers, what are they doing, who are their customers, what are their plans.
And then there's the question of what we can do about it, right? Because it feels like potentially the beginning of the end of privacy. Did she offer any hope that we will not live in a Chinese surveillance state in a matter of years?
She did. I mean, look, the technology is here, whether we like it or not, but that doesn't mean we just throw up our hands. There are things you can do to figure out how to use it safely and regulate it accordingly. So we talked at length about the specific ways we can do that.
Fantastic. Well, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll hear your conversation with Kashmir Hill.
The Anxious Achiever is the podcast about your mental health and your work, where leaders from top companies, entrepreneurs, athletes, celebrities, and leading experts share how they've managed through anxiety, depression, and other mental health challenges, and how they've become better leaders in the process. You'll laugh, you'll cry, you'll feel seen, and you'll learn great tools and skills. And I guarantee you're gonna look at leadership in a new way. Come find out why we won the Mental Health America 2023 Media Award. Get The Anxious Achiever wherever you find your podcasts.
Kashmir Hill, welcome to The Next Big Idea.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Your new book, Your Face Belongs to Us, which I loved, by the way, is about a mysterious facial recognition company called Clearview AI. Can you quickly describe what this company, what its technology does?
Yeah, so this company scraped billions of photos from the public web, from social media sites like Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Venmo, without anyone's consent, and created this facial recognition app. You essentially upload a photo of somebody and it finds all these places on the internet where their photos appear with links. And the company was, when I discovered them, was secretly selling this app to law enforcement.
Wow. Okay. So that's some pretty severe privacy infringement, it would seem.
Yes, this was very shocking to people, the millions of people that are in their database. They have 30 billion faces in their database now. So yes, this came as a surprise.
Right, because when you upload a photo to a social media site, Instagram or whatever, a birthday photo, you don't expect a detective to be culling through these photos and checking them out.
Yeah, I mean, I think people have been aware for a long time that there are privacy risks to being on the internet, but I don't think that most people uploading photos over the last 20, 30 years realized that someone would come along and make the internet searchable by face. So I think this was surprising, this idea that, photos you might not even know about that are on the internet are now findable because they're linked to you this way.
So let's go back to November 2019. It's such a fascinating beginning, right? You've just been hired by the New York Times. So how did Clearview come onto your radar?
Yeah, so I got an email from a source that I knew from the past. I've been covering privacy and technology for a long time. And he had been doing public records requests, FOIA requests to police departments around the country because he wanted to know what facial recognition companies they were using and how much they were paying for it. And police had been doing this for a long time, using facial recognition technology. Usually that didn't work all that well to search criminal mugshot databases and maybe state driver's license photos. But he came across this company, Clearview AI, in a response from the Atlanta Police Department. It was a 26-page PDF that he'd gotten that he forwarded to me. And the first page of it was a legal memo marked privileged and confidential. And it was written by this really high-profile lawyer, Paul Clement, who used to be a U.S. Solicitor General. And he's describing Clearview AI and what they'd done in this memo. And he's basically had been hired by the company to write this memo for police to reassure them that they could use Clearview AI without breaking state or federal laws.
So that sort of set off a little red alarm in your mind?
The first of many. And then when I looked them up online, there just wasn't much out there. They were kind of exposing all this information about us, but they themselves were staying in the shadows. And all they had was this very simple website, Clearview AI, with the motto, "Artificial intelligence for a better world." Did not mention facial recognition technology or anything. And it had an address that put them in New York City. And it was actually, the address was just a few blocks away from the New York Times office. But when I walked over to find it, the building wasn't there. It didn't exist. So yes, many red alerts in the very beginning of investigating this company.
That must be a great moment though, right? When you're starting an investigation and then you go to the building thinking, all right, I'm going to talk to someone. Maybe there's a simple solution. And then it just doesn't exist. Then you know something's going on here.
Yeah. In the book, I compare it to Harry Potter. I just kind of like was going back and forth to the buildings that it should have been in the middle of, being like, am I missing it? Is it above? Is it under? It was a really strange experience, especially for a company that was hawking this like radical technology. You want to be able to put a face to a company like that.
It's funny that, I mean, throughout this story, and we'll get to, more and more details about it, there are a lot of sort of contradictions and paradoxes where it's true, like a company about sort of essentially disabling privacy is super, super sneaky and private and anonymous almost, just does not want anything about it known.
Yeah, I would find out they only had one employee on the website LinkedIn, and he had no work experience beyond being a sales manager at Clearview AI, and he had 2 connections, and his name was John Good. So I was like, this is clearly a fake person. And I would later find out it was a pseudonym that the founder was using with a fake photo. I mean, just, didn't want to be found by his own tool, clearly.
And you mentioned in the book, there really early on where you asked them to put your name into the system.
Yeah.
Right, to see what would come up if they look you up.
Yeah, not my name, but my photo.
Your photo.
So the company wouldn't talk to me, and so they claimed, this legal memo said that they had hundreds of police departments that were using the app. So I said, I'll go try to find a police officer who's used it, and I found a few. And the first ones I talked to were really excited. They said this worked like nothing they used before, and I said, well, I'd love to see how it works. And they said, send your photo along. And I did. And each time I did, the officer would stop talking to me. And one of them who ran the search said, you don't have any results in the app. And I'm like, that's so strange. I have so many photos on the internet. And he said, yeah, maybe their servers are down. What I would come to find out is that Clearview AI had put an alert on my face, and they were getting a notification every time an officer searched for me, and they were reaching out to the officers saying, don't talk to her. They deactivated the account of one of the officers. And it was so chilling, because it meant, one, they were tracking me, and that they could see everyone law enforcement was searching for, and that they controlled the ability to be found.
That is terrifying, that they could just sort of filter on and off who has access to it. And I mean, that feels, not to get conspiracy theory, but that feels very sort of like deep state, where you're being watched. There's this surveillance of anything. Like there's a list of people, like a blacklist, and you are on it.
It was a lot of power for this small startup to have, especially when, again, they were hiding who they were and were just kind of facing no public scrutiny at the time I first found out about them.
The story brings together a really fascinating cast of characters. Let's start with essentially the creator, Juan Tontat.
Yes.
He is a young, eccentric Australian computer engineer, drops out of college at 19, moves to San Francisco. And he's this long-haired kind of neo-hippie guy, right? Loves playing guitar, a little gender fluid. And he starts making Facebook apps, like those sort of horrible quiz apps, which I remember back in the time, right? And then he moves on to sort of cheap like iPhone mobile apps. So he's just hustling to where the money is. Can you tell me a little more about Juan, how you found him?
Yeah, so I kept looking for doors to knock on to find out who was behind Clearview AI. And I found out that they had 2 possible investors. It was just like listed on a website called PitchBook. One was Peter Thiel, and he did not respond when I reached out. And the other was a group called Kirinnaga Partners, and they were in Bronxville, New York, which is just like north of Manhattan. So I got on a train. I went to their office. They weren't there. all their neighbors told me they never came into the office. A delivery man came. He said they never are here. I hung out awkwardly in the hallway for an hour. And then I was about to leave and go back to Manhattan. And I'm coming down the stairs into the lobby. And these two guys walk in and they just looked rich. They just looked moneyed, had like very nice clothes on. I said, "Are you with Kiranaga Partners?" They said, "We are. Who are you?" And I said, "I'm the New York Times reporter who's been trying to get in touch with you." And their faces fell. Yeah. And they said, "Clearview's lawyers said we're not supposed to talk to you." But I was pregnant at the time, so I just showed off my belly, said I'd come all this way. And they offered to go inside and give me water and just chat off the record with me. But then when they're talking about Clearview, they're so excited about their investment in the company and how it's going to transform how we find information about people, that will Clearview a face in the same way we Google someone. And they just agreed to go on the record and just start singing the company's praises. And I said, "Well, I've been trying to figure out who's behind this company, like who's the technical mastermind." And they said, "Oh, he's a really interesting guy. He's descended from Vietnamese royalty, complete computer wizard, and his name is a little hard to pronounce. Like, let me write it down on a whiteboard for you. And it's Hoan Ton Tat." And they actually told me that he'd been using the name John Good on LinkedIn. That was the pseudonym he'd been using because he had some Gawker history, as they put it. And so, yeah, I ended up Googling him on the train on the way back to the city, and he did have some very interesting results on Google.
What was his Gawker history?
So during that time when he was trying to strike it rich in the tech gold rush in San Francisco, he had created this YouTube clone called Video and had done this kind of scammy thing where he told people to log into the site with their instant messenger credentials, like their Google chat. Right. And then once they did that, he took advantage of having access to their account to send out messages to all of their friends saying, "Hey, check out this video on Video." And then when the friends went to the site, they would sign in and it would make the same thing happen. And so it created this like worm that was going through the whole internet, and everyone was freaking out about being hacked by this porny sounding site called Video. Valleywag had this very critical and scathing post about him, calling him a hacker, created this worm. And it was not, a good first hit for somebody trying to hawk a radical tech tool to investors and police departments.
Clearview AI claimed that they had a super high 98.6% accuracy rate, right? And what made them so accurate versus all the other, because they weren't the only people pursuing facial recognition technology.
Yeah. So when I first found out about Clearview AI, I thought it was, that Hoan Ton Tat was some kind of super genius, that he had kind of advanced facial recognition beyond what the kind of giants of Silicon Valley had been able to do, more than intelligence agencies and the US government. And I couldn't understand how. How did this guy who was making Facebook quizzes and an app called Trump Hair all of a sudden creating this like magical superpower? And what I would find out as I was doing the reporting for this book is that essentially he was, as he put it, he said, "I was standing on the shoulders of giants." He was building on research that had been done into facial recognition for decades that in the last decade has basically been shared online. And you can now get access to these really powerful facial recognition algorithms. And so if you're just a little, if you're tech savvy, even as a small actor, you can build something really, really powerful.
So a lot of this is essentially open source and you just cobble it together. I'm not a computer engineer, but it seems like these are products that exist and you just have to be very savvy about how to put them together.
Yeah, exactly. And I found out that Google and Facebook had both developed tools very similar to Clearview AI internally, just this ability to take a photo of somebody and find out their name or find other photos. And they decided that it was too radical to release, and they kind of held it back essentially for a decade, which is interesting because I don't think most of us, when we think of Google and Facebook, think of them as conservative when it comes to data collection or user privacy.
Right.
But yeah, they sat on it and they bought up the startups that kind of pioneered some of these things a decade ago, and then it was just that Clearview AI made this breakthrough that was not a technological breakthrough, but rather an ethical one. They were just willing to do what other companies hadn't been willing to do.
It's really interesting to think of Google and Facebook developing this and then refusing to release it, essentially, or burying it. Do you think that's just because, I mean, I don't know that they, like you said, they don't have a track record of really worrying about people's privacy, but is it just, would it be bad for the companies? Is this, I mean, what exactly is it that you think people would turn on them? They sort of sense that this is gonna go over badly with users.
Yeah, I mean, I think one, they're very scrutinized. There's been a lot of attention paid to privacy mistakes they've made in the past. It's been expensive for them. Facebook paid $650 million to settle a lawsuit stemming from rolling out photo tagging in Illinois years ago, facial recognition technology, and kind of how recklessly Facebook rolled it out to tag friends in photos was part of a $5 billion settlement that Facebook paid to the FTC over privacy violations. I don't think they're move fast and break things anymore. They're a bit more cautious. And probably when they're doing the risk analysis of what do we have to gain versus what do we have to lose, they decided it's not worth it to us right now. But for Clearview, that calculus is really different. They don't have anything to lose. They only have something to be gained by kind of being a regulatory entrepreneur and going out there and pioneering this radical use of the technology.
What's so intriguing about the story is you can see it narratively, right, from their point of view, like Juan's point of view and his partners, where you think they're a scrappy little startup. They have this, move fast, break things. They have this amazing technology. It's going to change the world. Was there a sense from them that they were aware of the dangers to society or the dangers in general to privacy, or were they sort of oblivious?
So once I found out who Juan Tat was and that he was behind the company, he finally agreed to talk to me. And we had this first interview. And I asked that question. I said, okay, you guys have created this technology. You, as far as I knew at that time, were limiting the use to police departments. But, you've crossed this line. You've broken this taboo. What if this becomes available more generally and everybody has access to facial recognition technology and none of us can be anonymous in public anymore? Are you worried about that, basically? Or have you thought about that and what it means? And he said, that's a good question. I'll have to think about that.
Really? It just had never come up? During a whiteboard session, nobody said, hey, is it cool that we're annihilating the concept of privacy from the world going forward?
He did not have an answer for me.
Hi, I'm DC Marshall.
Hi, I'm Mita Malik.
We are the co-host of the Brown Table Talk podcast, where we discuss how to help women of color thrive in their workplaces.
And we invite allies to join us to help women of color win at work. We have a seat waiting for you. Subscribe to Brown Table Talk wherever you enjoy podcasts.
Hey folks, Rufus here. If you're a fan of our interviews with physicians, scientists, or entrepreneurs, then I have the perfect podcast recommendation for you, Raising Health. Previously called BioEats World, Raising Health comes from leading venture capital firm Andreessen Horowitz, A16Z. Each episode, Raising Health dives deep into the heart of healthcare, biotech, and AI with A16Z general partners. Along the way, they explore the real challenges and opportunities in health and biotech entrepreneurship. Not to mention, you'll hear raw insights and actionable advice from notable guests like Omada CEO and co-founder Sean Duffy, and AI expert and In-Citro CEO Daphne Kohler. Don't miss out. Follow Raising Health wherever you get your podcasts.
In the writing of this book, you talked to a lot of privacy and legal experts, and they were pretty uniformly horrified about what, this technology could do. Can you share some of the scenarios you described or give any real life examples of how the tech could go really wrong for
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm going to go over kind of 3 different ways it could get used and is being used. So one is government use. With a technology like this, you can put this in all the cameras, the surveillance cameras in a given city, in a given country, and track people as they move about their lives, as they gather to do things that you as a government don't like. So Russia and China have used this to identify protesters, and have police go to their homes and give them tickets. China uses it to, in some cities, just automatically give people jaywalking tickets when they cross the street. They've used it to suppress, human rights activity, to monitor Uyghur Muslims in their country. They've also used it to name and publicly shame people who wear pajamas in public.
That one's a little out of left field. What? Pajamas? That feels like low on the, if you're going to do some state surveillance, I don't know that I'd bother with pajamas. But
this seems to be very China specific, maybe city specific, of wanting people to look a certain way in public. Right. And so it's kind of chilling in many different ways. I think the weirdest one is that in Beijing, they're having problems with toilet paper thieves at the Temple of Heaven. And so they deployed facial recognition cameras in the toilets, in the stalls.
The stalls? Oh
where you had to look into a camera to get a certain amount of toilet paper. And if you wanted more, you had to wait something like 7 minutes to get more. So
that sounds like a George Saunders short story.
So that's government use. Then we can think about company use. And my favorite example of this is Madison Square Garden in New York City. Famous events venue. The Knicks play there. The Rangers play there. It's every musician's dream to play the stage there. U2, Mariah Carey. So Madison Square Garden installed facial recognition cameras a few years ago for security reasons, to keep out anyone who was violent or any threats they were worried about. But in the last year, the owner, James Dolan, realized, I can use this technology to keep out people I don't like, namely lawyers. I hate getting sued. We have so many lawsuits. They're expensive. They're annoying. And so Madison Square Garden went to the law firms' websites and scraped the photos of all the lawyers, thousands of lawyers, and put them on the ban list so that they couldn't get into the venue anymore. And I actually went there once with a personal injury lawyer who worked for one of these firms. And she wasn't involved in a case against Madison Square Garden or any of its companies, but she was on the list. And as soon as we walked through the door, security guards stopped us, asked for her ID, and she got a note kicking her out. And it's just stunning, but it shows how this slippage can happen, right? Where you install it for security reasons, but then realize all these other ways you can use it. So I could imagine other companies, using this to keep out people they don't like, maybe politicians or regulators. Remember how Uber used to track local regulators and they wouldn't be able to call an Uber? So keep out politics, keep out investigative journalists, or maybe you write a bad review of a restaurant, and next time you try to go there, they won't let you in, or they'll spit in your soup. It just would be a way. It would be a way for companies to, punish people that they don't like for whatever reason, whether it's political beliefs or who they work for. And then finally, just the way we could use it on each other. So imagine you're buying something sensitive at the pharmacy. You're buying hemorrhoid cream, and somebody takes a picture of you, and they're like, haha, Panio was buying hemorrhoid cream. Or you're a woman who's getting abortion services at a medical clinic, and when you walk outside, there's protesters there, and they take a photo of you, and they blast it out on the internet. Or you're just on I write about people who are just, so mean to each other and write horrible things about each other online. What if you just are rude to somebody in public? You bump into them, on the bus, and they take your photo and they know who you are. And then they just go and write all these horrible things about you. You go into a bar, there's a creepy person there. You never want to see them again, but they take your photo and they're able to find out your name, where you live, et cetera. It's just so many ways that this could be used in a chilling way.
Yeah, so many of those scenarios, they go from obviously sort of the minor inconveniences to real risks to your life, to your liberty, to your access to places. It is really scary. It's kind of a big question, but how do we push back against that? You mentioned in the book that Clearview AI, their reach extended internationally, but they face some backlash in Europe, which has a much stronger track record of defending privacy, especially online. Can you explain how different countries have responded to Clearview AI? And is there anything that we can learn in the U.S. from these responses?
Yeah. I think that people that are kind of selling and promoting technology often say, it's here. You can't undo it.
It's inevitable, right? What can you do about it?
We need to learn to live with it. But there's been many times before where new technologies are developed and we hold them back, with policy and with regulation. And we're really seeing facial recognition technology play out differently here versus Europe. Europe has these privacy laws that say you can't use people's personal information without their consent, especially sensitive personal information like their biometric identifier, their face print.
Yeah.
Privacy regulators in Europe, Canada, and Australia investigated Clearview AI, and they said that what the company had done was illegal. It violated their privacy laws. And they said, you can't do business in our countries. And Clearview had been offering trials to police departments and officers around the world, but it pulled back. And it got kicked out of Europe and Canada and Australia. It was effective. It wasn't effective in that the regulator said, delete our citizens from your database. And Clearview has kind of shrugged their shoulders about that.
Right.
But if you live in those places, you can contact Clearview and say, I want you to delete all my photos. Right now, it's kind of the onus is on individuals. But regulation can hold back technology. We can choose the future we want to live in. We don't have to just accept that, this is the world because it's possible to do these things technically.
Are there ways that individuals and organizations can push for privacy rights in the face of this advancing, surveillance technology?
Yeah, it's hard because it's a systemic problem. To making laws, creating new regulations is on the people we elect, the people in power. So as individuals, that's challenging. But I think as individuals, what we can do is, one, as always, just thinking about what you put publicly on the internet, what other people put up of you. And then if you live there's a few states already here in the U.S. that have relevant laws. Right. And so if you live in a place with a state law that gives you the right to access information a company holds on you and delete it, like California, Colorado, Connecticut, Virginia, you can go to Clearview and get yourself removed from the database. And we do actually have one state with a really strong law, Illinois, that says if a company wants to use your biometrics, like your face print or your voice print or your fingerprints, they need to get your permission or pay a fine of up to $5,000. And so people in Illinois are protected against this. I mentioned Madison Square Garden. They have a theater in Chicago, but they can't ban lawyers there with facial recognition technology because they're not allowed to under this law. So one takeaway from the book is that laws do work. They can work.
It sounds like what we need is a federal law, because if it's state by state, that would take a long time.
But privacy is a bipartisan issue. Like, we care about this. We need to protect people against this. We just haven't gotten a really relevant law at the national level yet.
You mentioned that it's bipartisan, and I think that's interesting because it would seem like everybody wants a certain degree of privacy, right? Nobody wants to just walk around totally exposed with their personal life. But with that in mind, people really also want convenience, right? They want to be able to, people will give away their information to a surprising degree. I think a lot of us were surprised by what everyone will just kind of throw online, not even worry about phone number, address, email. Our face, though, what's different about our face?
A face, one thing, it's hard to hide it. Basically, you need a ski mask if you want to avoid being identified this way, because the facial recognition companies like Clearview AI and others have even made this work around COVID masks. But I just think I think there's many convenient ways to use facial recognition. I open my phone with my face. I want the benefit. I do think using facial recognition technology to solve crimes is a benefit, as long as you do it right and you do all the investigating you need to. There have been a handful of mistaken arrests, people arrested for the crime of looking like someone else. I don't think that's a benefit. But yeah, there's benefits to this. And my hope would be that we can get those conveniences, like we can get the good parts of the technology, but not have to submit to it just being ubiquitous and just everywhere, and that you can no longer have a private conversation over dinner because you fear that somebody next to you could take your photo and then all of a sudden understand everyone you're gossiping about.
Sure.
So my hope is that we can harness the good, the conveniences. One thing I've been thinking a lot about is Meta has talked about how the chief technology officer a few years ago said, I'd love to put facial recognition capabilities in these augmented reality glasses that we're trying to develop. I think there's so much good that could come of it for those of us who can't remember somebody's name at a cocktail party, or people who are blind or have kind of face blindness. But he said, they're worried about how society would react, whether it would be legal. But I kind of could imagine this future in which maybe Facebook develops augmented reality glasses and they create an opt-in model for facial recognition where you could say, yeah, I want everyone to recognize my face, or I want my friends to recognize my face, or my friends of friends, that we'd have like privacy settings for our face in the same way that we have them for our social media profiles. And I've been on book tour. And so at an event in San Francisco, I said, if these glasses existed, how many of you would opt into your face being recognized? And a third of the crowd actually raised their hands. And I was surprised. I asked the same question in New York, same size crowd, like 200 people, and only one person raised their hand. So yeah, it's such a spectrum of what people are comfortable with.
Yeah, I know that I personally am terrible at remembering names and faces. And very often I'll see someone in the supermarket and it'll be the parent of a friend of one of my kids. And I'll think, I know this guy. I don't know his name. I don't know what he does. This is really embarrassing. Let's just buy my lemons and get out of here before I say something embarrassing. And he realizes I have no idea who I'm talking to. But then again, we can't have everything. I mean, maybe that's just the cost of privacy.
Right. And then some people, I make that point. I said, wouldn't it be nice? I've had this problem where people come up to me to sign the book and I'm supposed to know their name and I'm just blanking on it. I'm like, oh my God, I wish I had Clearview on my phone right now. But then I think critics who are really worried about all the chilling effects of this technology say, really? It's worth our loss of anonymity to avoid that little bit of social awkwardness. And I understand that resonates with me.
I mean, because, everything's an exchange. I feel like a lot of times that gets lost in the conversation about technological advancements is, it's sort of like a new medicine, right? There's always some side effect, but is it worth the side effect?
Right. Like I love my phone. I love that I can easily connect with people. I can drop into any city in the world and immediately, call an Uber, know where to go, know the best restaurants. But also I hate how much I stare at my phone and how addicted to it I am.
So is Clearview still in business? I mean, are they a viable company? What's going on with them?
Yeah, so Clearview AI is still in business, still have lots of contracts with law enforcement here in the U.S. They have a sizable contract with the Department of Homeland Security, with ICE. The FBI has a contract with them. The Army funded their research into an app for augmented reality glasses that soldiers could wear on bases so that they could get information about people in real time around them. They are facing lawsuits in a few different states here. They have been issued sizable fines by regulators outside of the U.S., but so far they haven't paid them, and they're, appealing them kind of forever. And I think it's hard for regulators to force a company that's based in the U.S. to pay the fine. So yeah, I'm watching. I don't know what's going to happen with that, but yeah, they're still in business. They're still selling facial recognition technology, and they're still growing their database of faces.
And is that an issue as far as they're scraping? I assume Instagram, which is, owned by Meta, and Facebook are two of the biggest places to scrape from. Are they allowed to do that?
Well, so when these companies, Google, LinkedIn, Venmo, Facebook, found out that Clearview AI had created this database with their images, they all sent the company cease and desist letters and said, stop doing this, delete the information that you scraped. It violates our terms of service. But then they didn't do anything else. I mean, they didn't sue. They haven't forced the issue. So as far as I know, Clearview AI is still doing what it's doing, has kept all that information in their database, and I can only assume is gathering more.
So was that just a sort of a performance on the behalf of the tech giants?
It's kind of a gray legal issue. It's unclear if this violates the law to kind of scrape information that's on the public internet. There's one case where LinkedIn sued a company that was scraping information from their site, and And basically, a federal judge said that it wasn't illegal. And so I don't know if that's why the companies didn't pursue it more, that they just thought they wouldn't win in court, and they didn't necessarily want to bring more attention to the fact that all their users' photos have been taken.
Right. So they're, just kind of put their head down, hope people don't pay attention. In the wake of your book coming out and doing really well, people are loving it. Has there been any reaction on Clearview's behalf or on any of the people at Clearview or any of the people mentioned in the book?
I haven't heard anything from Clearview so far. I'm not sure how I feel about the book, but I have been hearing from a lot of individuals and policymakers asking, so what are these laws? For the people, basically how well your face is protected depends on where you live. And so people that live in places where their face is not very well protected have been asking me, well, what are these effective laws? What do they look like? How could we do that elsewhere in the state at the local level? And so I do think there's been a lot of thought to that, and that I think that's where, when I look at the last decade in the United States, decade or more, in terms of privacy laws, it's all happened at the local and state level. So I assume that's how it'll continue to go. So I don't know, maybe we'll see more states pass privacy laws that kind of protect you against something like this, allow you to get out of Clearview's database if you don't want to be in it.
Right. Well, it's funny because I imagine you wrote the book because you're an investigative journalist and you write about tech. It makes sense. You're pursuing it. But it's also a wake-up call.
Yeah, I just really think we could lose that ability to just assume that when you're going about your life and you're just walking around, you can assume you're anonymous to anyone that you don't actually know.
I know that feeling, and I'm sure most people do, when you're hanging out with your friends and the conversation gets a little sort of sideways, and then you say things you think, oh, thank God no one's around because I don't want to stand by that comment in public. That was a very bad joke. So yeah, it is terrifying to think everything it could be out in the air. I wish I could sort of go back in time and give Thomas Jefferson a nudge and add privacy to life, liberty, privacy, and the pursuit of happiness. I feel like that would have saved us a lot of trouble hundreds of years later.
Yeah, it's definitely this tension here in the U.S. It's between privacy and kind of right to information, freedom of speech, and then also privacy versus safety and security.
Right.
And, this is a useful tool for law enforcement as long as they don't get it wrong.
Sure.
I think it's pretty uncomfortable to think that every time police are trying to solve a shoplifting crime and they use Clearview AI, they're searching through all of our photos to try to make a match. And sometimes that does go wrong because we're not all unique snowflakes, as one professor put it to me. We have doppelgangers in the world. And so that's a downside.
Yeah, one thing you make clear in the book, and I didn't know this before, is when people do facial recognition searches, it doesn't just do one hit. Like the way you see it in a movie or TV, it's like scan, like bing, and like there's your terrorist. He's in Bulgaria. It's just a list of 20, 30, 40 potential people, and then it's up to the officer or sergeant, whatever, to figure it out. So that is scary because there could be all these false flags, right? You could be in a list because you look, 80% like somebody.
Yeah, you get this long list with kind of confidence scores about how sure the computer is. And ultimately, it's this human person picking it out. And so there's one guy, Randall Quran Reed, lives in Atlanta, Georgia, gets pulled over and arrested for basically stealing purses in Louisiana. And he'd never even been to the state before.
Wow.
He ended up getting held in jail for a week awaiting extradition to Louisiana before people realized actually it wasn't him, and he had been identified with Clearview AI, and he just looked a lot like this other guy. And so one thing, if we do accept, we're saying, yes, facial recognition technology is a tool that law enforcement should have. We need better rules about how they use it and the amount of investigating you need to do before you arrest somebody.
Reading is a form of meditation that makes you smarter. It's a radical act of patience in this frenetic, tech-addicted world we all live in. And the data shows reading is a kind of miracle drug. It reduces stress, increases motivation, improves sleep. It's correlated with more success, higher income. And books don't run out of batteries. But what to read? We at the Next Big Idea Club can help you with that. You've heard about our app, which provides daily book summaries from the authors themselves, but have you heard about our box subscription? Go to nextbigideaclub.com to learn all about it. Here's the short version. Sign up for a Next Big Idea Club hardcover box subscription, and you will get 4 boxes per year, each containing 2 books. That's 8 books per year. And not just any books, the best books of the season, according to our 4 legendary curators, Malcolm Gladwell, Susan Cain, Daniel Pink, and Adam Grant. Plus, we discuss the books with the authors and distill them into exclusive audio e-courses. Go to nextbigideaclub.com and become a member of our growing community.
Welcome back to the show. I've been speaking with New York Times reporter Kashmir Hill about her new book, Your Face Belongs to Us. I asked her, what's the relationship between facial recognition and generative AI?
So many of the questions are the same about Clearview AI, facial recognition technology, and generative AI, just in terms of the scraping all this information from the internet and whether companies should have the right to do that, our ability to kind of get out of the databases. But in terms of preventing it, so one thing that a technologist who's kind of dedicated to privacy told me about was an idea where we essentially disguise photos that we put online, like change them at the pixel level so that it's not possible to derive this biometric face print that would match to us in the real world. But it would require kind of like a large-scale implementation. A company like Meta would have to just roll this out on all of their photos. And it would only work moving forward. For the photos that Clearview already has in its database, not really possible to do that. But yeah, I worry about like facial recognition technology combined with generative AI.
Sure.
Like I'm thinking, you see a dad and his son playing on the playground. You take a photo of the kid, you search them with a tool like this, find images of them, figure out who they are, who the parents are, find a video of them, get their voice print, do a generative AI thing of them pretending that they're kidnapped, like call the mother, say, give me $10,000 right now. I have your child. You can have the child talking in, this deep fake voice. I mean, there's really all these ways that we've kind of put our images out there, put our videos out there, just not realizing these technologies that were going to come along that could be used against us. It's one of the hardest things about privacy is predicting, what can be used and how later to harm you.
And that's not even that sort of futuristic. I mean, that could be done right now.
It's already happening. There's people that are getting these scammer calls of somebody with a loved one's voice. And yeah, I just can't believe it's already happening. It's just happening so fast, faster than we can adjust to it or make laws against it.
So do you think it's going to be more of a tech arms race, or is our best choice or our best hope some sort of regulation?
I mean, I think we clearly need some new laws and regulations. And then I think part of it is being informed and knowing what's possible. I mean, one kind of constituent that I wanted to write this book for are people that do online, sex work, digital sex work. And I think that people started using sites like OnlyFans, and they kind of assumed, okay, as long as I don't have my name attached to this, no one's ever going to find this. And I don't think people realize how powerful facial recognition technology has become. And I think it's going to affect people unevenly. It's going to be, it's just going to be more of a problem for certain groups than others. And certainly sex workers will kind of bear the biggest brunt of this because it's such stigmatized work.
So do you think Clearview is sort of the end of anonymity? Is privacy dead? Has it gone the way of the 8-track and the floppy disk?
I mean, I think our ability to move anonymously in public, have this kind of zone of privacy around us, is fundamentally threatened by the technology that Clearview AI and others have developed. And yeah, I mean, I hope that we roll it back, because I personally don't want to live in a panopticon. I don't want to feel like I am constantly watched, that people constantly know what I'm saying, because it just sounds horrible to me.
It's so strange to imagine, especially in the USA, which, prides itself on like land of the free, right? So it's all about liberty. It's privacy, sort of do your own thing as long as it doesn't interfere with anyone. This does seem like across the board, everybody would be behind supporting some kind of privacy for people.
I think so. I think that it's funny because some people say, oh, people don't care about privacy, or yeah, privacy is dead. But I just don't think it's true. I think we all have just certain things we do in life that we don't want the whole world to know about.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been a fascinating talk. The book itself is irresistible. It's so fast paced. I loved it. And the characters, I know I didn't get into it too much because I want people who read the book to really enjoy all the twists and turns, but there's some really great developments, and the characters are so memorable.
Yeah, it's scary, but I also want it to be a fun read. So it is. I'm glad to hear you liked it.
Gasping, and I was like, "Oh God, this is terrible. Why am I smiling? I'm having a good time reading about the end of privacy."
I do think there's hope, but yeah, I mean, it requires us to act. I think if we just kind of let things go the way that they're going, we're not going to be happy with the world that we're living in. But I do want people to laugh a little bit about it as they're reading the book.
Well, thank you again, Kashmir. This was a great conversation and a wonderful book.
Thanks so much for reading it and sharing with people. I really appreciate it.
That was the Next Big Idea Club's editorial director, Panio Gianopoulos, speaking with Kashmir Hill about her new book, Your Face Belongs to Us. Would you like to hear more from Kashmir? Check out the book bite she made for the Next Big Idea app. It's a 12-minute audio and text summary of Your Face Belongs to Us, and the only place you can find it is on our app. There you will also find beautiful audio e-courses, conversations with our curators, Adam Grant, Daniel Pink, Malcolm Gladwell, Susan Cain, and coming soon, powerful AI tools that will supercharge your learning journey. Head over to your app store and download the Next Big Idea app today. You know the drill by now. If you like this show, please leave us a rating and a review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen. We really appreciate it. And if you have feedback, ideas for future guests, questions, send us an email. We're at podcast@nextbigideaclub.com. Today's episode was produced by Caleb Bissinger, sound design by Mike Toda. The Next Big Idea is a proud member of the LinkedIn Podcast Network. I'm Rufus Griscom. See you next week.